Earlier this year, I set out to conduct a climbing experiment. Finger strength is something that as climbers, we seem to be fairly preoccupied with. So when my friend Emil Abrahamsson posted his viral video where he hangboards 2 times a day every day for a month, it caught my attention, along with almost every other climber on YouTube. Rather than dive into what is a fairly complex study and Emil's interpretation of that study and his results, I'll let Emil explain.
The initial video was a product after my brother did this no hang protocol for 2 months or so, and I wanted to try it myself because he'd been suffering from basically chronic finger injuries for years. It never really got better. He would always injure himself when training, just doing anything, climbing regular boulders. And then he started doing this protocol and suddenly he just wasn't getting injured anymore. And I've had a pretty similar experience with my fingers. I always struggled both with finger strength and also keeping them healthy. And so I decided to try it out, and I got pretty shocking results.
When Emil explained that his protocol was available to use on the Crimpd app, I hatched a plan to conduct an experiment from an amateur perspective. As someone who hasn't really trained much over the years and is especially estranged from the hangboard, I was psyched to discover what the results might be for strength gains, but also my finger health overall.
None of it really made sense. I was completely shocked at how much better I could hang on a hangboard after doing this for 30 days. So the first video was just a light presentation of all this data, what had happened to me. I mean, we based this off of a study from Keith Barr that basically stated that every 6 hours is how often you can stimulate your tendons and get the best molecular response to recover and strengthen them. It takes 6 hours to recover the tendons if you're doing it submaximally, if you're not loading, spring loading them to basically have them tear.
Sure. From your experience, what kind of thing do you think I could expect to see at the end of a 30-day period of hangboarding twice a day?
What I feel is the most common response from people who have commented, left me messages and stuff, is that your fingers will feel more healthy.
Okay.
It's going to feel like you can pull harder on the climbing wall, and not necessarily that you'll have a much higher, for me, you will be able to hang super much weight, much more weight than before.
Yeah.
I think it's a realistic response because you'll effectively be doing 60 hangboard sessions.
Then, as fate would have it, in the very same session that Emil taught me through the Crimpd app protocol, I injured my A2. Crimping my way up this problem here, I picked up one of my worst finger injuries to date after a long while ignoring a tweak in my A2 middle finger. Initially, getting injured seemed like the end of my experiment. My finger was painful to weight and I was forced to take a step back, or so I thought. During this time I reached out to a physio and he helped me to consider a different perspective. Perhaps I could reconsider my finger injury trajectory, and after an initial period of rest I could still see my experiment through, but with rehab in mind. Perhaps submaximal hangs could not only be a valuable injury prevention tool, but a way to rehab my finger and come back a healthier climber overall. Enter the modified 2 times a day hangboard protocol. After an initial period of complete rest to reduce the inflammation in my finger, I set out to try Emil's Crimpd protocol for the summer. I would weight my fingers as often as I could without it hurting or aggravating my healing pulley. When I had a good structure, I'd hangboard once in the morning and once in the evening, and when climbing began to feature more again in my week, I'd use the protocol as a warm-up for my climbing session. My experience with this protocol spanned sessions hanging in the van when we were on the road, and lots of touring gyms hangboard setups when we would film over the last few months. Of course, here it should be mentioned that I do struggle to stick to anything, so let's apply what I like to call the lazy climber license and assume that 1 or 2 sessions may have been deferred. For the most part though, I managed to stick to my plan of submaximal hangs, hanging my way through France, Germany, Switzerland and then the US. The only thing I needed was the Crimpd app and an edge to hang on, and in fact I didn't even need an edge to hang on. So to explain what the 2 sessions look like, it's 2 sessions a day with roughly 6 hours in between. Hi Leo. I've been kind of pushing that shorter and longer occasionally, but it is 6 sets of varied grip types on a 18 to 20 millimeter edge, depending on what hangboard I am using. And the intensity is so little that my feet do not leave the ground, and the idea is that these isometric no-hang sessions should not have any impact on performance in other climbing sessions. So as my fingers started to feel a little better through the experiment time, I was obviously throwing in like climbing sessions and getting back into pulling hard on my fingers. And I found one of my concerns at the beginning, as I kind of outlined with Emil, is that adding this structured training into my climbing would have a negative impact on how I felt during sessions, but actually it's really designed in a way so that it has the opposite effect. This is purely supplemental. Here on the Crimpd app, you can follow the sessions outlined by Emil in his video and log each of them as you go. If you're interested in trying the protocol, you can download the Crimpd app using this link. And this month, Crimpd are giving away Crimpd Plus for life to someone who downloads the app using the link before the end of September. Crimpd Plus is a training subscription service which gives you full access to over 200 workouts and progressions, allows you to create custom training plans, and offers pre-built skill templates to add to your training plans. As a brief overview of the in-app experience, the protocol is outlined in sessions and you can just click and follow along at your convenience, or every day, twice a day for a month. Before I started the protocol, I had a few questions for Emil on intensity, so he'll share that now.
What the study showed is that what that means, like below your max, can be quite a lot lower than your max and still give these great molecular responses to the tendons. Okay. So basically, I keep this at around. If I'm doing several different hangs. One of them is a half crimp on this edge specifically, where I'll reduce to around 80% of my body weight of a hang. So if I added, like, if I pulled a little bit more, I would start hanging, but I'm tensing my fingers quite a bit, but not super intensely. And I could probably hold twice as much or more in a max hang, like if I was trying to push myself as much as possible. So I'm maybe at like half of my maximal load that I could hold those holds in.
After a little over a month of following the protocol on the app, I have a few things to note which I would like to share about my experience. I guess the first thing that I really found nice about this approach was the ease of entry. For me, I could literally hang anywhere. We've done a lot of traveling this summer and I've really liked that to do my rehab or to do my training, literally all I need is a hangboard, and not even that. I have done a lot of the protocol sessions on a hangboard, but I've just as equally done sessions on an edge. That kind of like leads me into my second point of just the ease of fitting it in around my other climbing sessions and other things that I had going on. Being that the sessions are 10 minutes, around 10 minutes in total, they were just really easy to fit into my schedule. With the Crimpd app and like logging my sessions especially, I really liked the feeling of structure, but also the quite unique feeling of working towards a goal. So a lot in climbing, I know goal setting is what motivates people to improve. I have always kind of struggled with that. I just enjoy climbing. I found training towards the goal of recovery actually a lot more motivating than I've ever found training towards the goal of performance, which is quite funny. What I really liked about this experience over the summer was that you can really make it what you want. So like I used the protocol alongside my regular climbing as my fingers started to improve, and it was really adaptable. So I was often like switching sessions around to fit my schedule and just like really being able to listen to my finger as I went. So now I'm going to move into kind of like the results. Like, do my fingers feel any different? In terms of how my fingers are feeling at this moment in time, it's kind of a tricky one, and I feel like it might be a slight letdown to say that generally my fingers at the minute, I would struggle to say that my fingers feel overall flat out healthier. I've been climbing a lot more than I have in recent months, so my fingers feel kind of stiff and sore. However, what I am really, really pleased with is my injury progression. So I injured my finger in March. It was by far one of the worst injuries I've ever had in my finger, and now I'm back at the end of September and I am climbing without pain, and I'm really happy with like my finger strength and how much I'm able to pull force-wise through the finger. So take with that to mean like what you will. I would feel pretty uncomfortable establishing cause and effect with that, but this is definitely the most sustained, like focused finger training that I've ever done, and I've bounced back from this injury quicker than I have any other injury. So I'm not gonna established cause and effect. I wouldn't want to put my name to that, but what I can say is that my finger feels really great. It feels really solid. I've been throwing myself around on it, crimping really hard. I'll try and insert some clips. Since I couldn't conduct these starting tests at the beginning due to taking a slightly different approach, the strength tests I'll be conducting today will serve as the before, setting me up nicely to follow up with the experiment I'd actually planned to film in the first place. For my strength tests, I tested the maximal amount of force I could exert through both my left and my right hand in a half crimp and open hand position. So let's start with the half crimp position. On the left hand side, which is the non-injured side, in the half crimp I was able to pull 47.2 at max, and on the injured side 46 kilograms on the dot. In the open grip position, I pulled 36.2 kilograms on the right hand and 36.9 on the left hand, which I thought was interesting, given the assumed right hand weakness and the previous disparity in score for the half crimp. For many years, I had the misconception that hanging on a hangboard was only for very strong people and only for getting very strong. My initial dip into this experiment taught me that whilst yes, hangs are great tools for maximising finger strength, there's also many different ways to use a fingerboard to cater to different goals and circumstances. Using Emil's submaximal hang protocol for rehabbing my finger was a really interesting insight into two things: the potential for submaximal hangs for efficient improvement on finger strength and overall health, and the potential in structured prehab and focused training schedules to improve my climbing as a whole. If you're interested in following this program for yourself, you can follow the link in the description. And again, Crimpd are giving away a lifetime of Crimpd Plus for one person who downloads the app. I look forward to sharing my results with you in the non-injured version of this video in a couple of months' time.